Tara Sullivan, Boston Globe, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We are 1 month tomorrow from the Super Bowl, so I presume the behemoth that is the NFL is dominating the sporting landscape in every way over there?
Well, it is for sure, although I will say in our little corner of New England where they fired the coach after 1 year, that has taken a few of the headlines away this week.
Well, I'll bet. So that's interesting. A lot of Patriots fans over here in Ireland. There's kind of a parallel, I suppose. Manchester United fans will painfully understand trying to follow a dynasty and a legend is not easy.
Yeah.
That said, the one difference with Manchester United, Alex Ferguson, their Bill Belichick-esque figure, did win the league in his final season. So things signed off in pretty good fashion. Whereas Belichick, as we know, had a difficult post-Tom Brady 3 years where they did spend money after Brady left and did only just fine, did nothing really comparable to Brady, who went off, of course, and won Super Bowl with the Buccaneers. And so they said bye-bye to Bill, and Jared Mayo, 38 years old, was given the job. And now after just one season, which is what happened to Ferguson's successor, he's been given the boot. They won 4 and lost 13. And beautifully, they managed to win the last game, which denies them first pick in the draft. A shambles in every way. Robert Kraft said, "This is one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. I've known Jared for 17 years. Winning 4 and losing 13 makes it sound like a decision he had to make. Has it generally been given thumbs up from Boston folk? He had to go?"
I think the consensus, yes, from the product on the field. It's interesting. I think for most of the season, Kraft would have loved to be able to retain Gerard Mayo. Like, I think, this is a person he felt very personally fond of, that he handpicked as Belichick's successor. He often references this trip the franchise took to Israel about 5 years ago, and it was on that trip that he decided Mayo was his next guy. But he wasn't wrong in some of what he admitted to in kind of a separate session with the media on Monday. The Patriots got worse every week, really, most every week as the season went on. They didn't improve. They regressed. And as much as we can indict some of what Belichick left behind, which is fair, the roster was not in great shape, it was essentially the same defense, which was really good in Belichick's last year. And Mayo's background is in defense, and the defense wasn't even good. So there were a lot of reasons, and I think some on the field, some off. He was often caught, I wouldn't say caught, but he was often in the position of walking back things he had said. I'm going to bench this running back because he keeps fumbling the ball. He's not going to start. And then he started anyway. So there were just things that mixed messaging kind of all over the place. And he just wasn't ready for the job. It's a tough spot. They put him in a tough spot. It just didn't work out. And I think most Patriots fans are happier to think of somebody more experienced taking the job for next season.
And are they predicting a prolonged period in the wilderness?
The fans are, they never want to admit to that because, the history there, and they have this sense of entitlement. It's an interesting thing from somebody who has worked in that market, for the last, 5 to 7 years, and was in the kind of New York area before that. Patriots fans are insufferable to anybody outside of New England. They think they are by far, deserve to win and are the best. So,
but you like them.
Yes.
You like your readers.
Well, it's a fun atmosphere at the games. I mean, they're very passionate, devoted fans, and they still showed up. I mean, it was freezing cold at Sunday's game. They're 3-13 and going into that game, and I was impressed at how many fans were there. As somebody who has seen the Giants fans kind of disappear. And in other places where you see it's much emptier. But it's the hard thing is, even going into this first year with Mayo, everybody knew this is a multi-year rebuild, right? Like, you have a rookie quarterback. He may not play right away. We got to build around him. And even given that this is a multi-year rebuild, Mayo just didn't do enough. So it's kind of it adds more. But that being said, they have a quarterback. This kid, Drake May, have gotten to see him. He was the 3rd overall pick, and he really did impress with very little talent around him, a bad offensive line. He did a lot of things to bring some excitement. So I think that's what gives the Patriot fan some optimism going forward, that even losing out on that first pick, it would have gotten them draft capital because they would have traded it down, and gotten more picks out of it. but at least it didn't cost them the ability to draft a quarterback of the future because they don't need that. They have that.
And I don't want to overplay the Manchester United comparison,
Yeah,
but
I love the
certainly
comparison.
one aspect in that instance was that just quite understandably and quite naturally, Ferguson in a Belichick way was just so all-consuming and all-powerful that suddenly when he disappears, the club realises, oh my God, we're lacking in about 10 different structures that every other club, in the modern era has put into place, be it a scouting system to just how we do things. There's Alex Ferguson did that. Are the Patriots coming to that realisation? Is that a factor here?
A little bit. The big word, the buzzword for them when they moved on from Belichick was we need more collaboration. And I think they recognized that Belichick in and of himself alone as a one individual had too much power, especially in building the roster. They're drafting. And it was jarring to hear Robert Kraft admit on Monday, like, our last drafts have been terrible, and usually owners won't even admit that far. And part of that has been sort of the rebuilding of the scouting system of the personnel department, because Belichick, he had this famous line many years ago, or actually it wasn't him, it was Bill Parcells who was his mentor or one of his mentors, that if you're going to cook the dinner, you want to be able to shop for the groceries, so that they want that control over the roster. But it really, in very few instances does it really work where one person has that much control. And I think it's a lot of what prohibited Belichick from getting hired in the NFL last year is that teams were pretty scared off of the notion of him wanting, much as he might have said otherwise, that he was so used to being in full control. So yeah, I think you make a very valid point. The Patriots are revamping a lot of things that were very Belichick dependent before. They also missed the good Belichick dependent stuff, the do your job, the Patriot way, if you will, the singular focus, the team above self. They were things he was really, really good at and had really set that structure in place. It's been hard for them, I think, to stick to that without his force of personality at the top.
Belichick himself is also in the process of revamping in quite unexpected ways. He's very, very close to the NFL all-time winning record, but couldn't seem to find employment. And you've referenced one of the main reasons as to why that might be is his desire for kind of an old-school control, difficult to work with. So he's gone the collegiate route, and the salary is very nice, and I'm sure he'll have full control there. So that will be interesting. But I suppose the more unexpected revamping has been as one of the chief media personalities in the entire world. I mean, I saw him turn up to the Tom Brady roast. And I thought, God, that's a surprising move. But it turns out Belichick is making several media appearances a week in many places. Is he any good? Is he a success? I'm presuming he's making a lot of money.
He has been very good. And I'll be honest, it's not that surprising. Who's had a little, like it, as opposed to Tom Brady, who's had a few more hiccups on his foray into the media world. See, the thing with Belichick was, he's always was a great storyteller. He always had great anecdotes if he just chose to do it. Like Friday morning press conferences, if the team was in a good place, you could get him going on, the value of the blindside hit, the or whatever, the importance of blindside protect, like the best punters in history. Like you could get him going on these NFL history tangents, and he was so very good. I recall last year, it's a big deal in America when Army plays Navy, the two military academies, when they play in football. The Army-Navy football game has a lot of tradition and history. And it was played at Gillette Stadium, not this year, last year. And Belichick went into the booth and did TV, and he was so good. And I thought, yeah, this guy is going to be good if he ends up in TV. And then he went on with Peyton and Eli Manning. He went on with Pat McAfee, these guys who are very, media personalities in their own right in America. And he really went toe for toe. He can be funny, he can be engaging. And he's really, really good at breaking down the game of football. He would do these film sessions that were really like classroom sessions for the average person. So not shocking to me at all that he was good at that. It just was more frustrating as somebody who'd covered him for a number of years that he didn't show that side a little more often. It was very, very much by design, the way he put that wall up with the media.
Yeah, thanks for nothing, Bill.
Yeah, exactly. Every once in a while, there'd be a rare gem, but they were few and far between.
Tom Brady, then you mentioned. The money in American television endlessly amazes me. I mean, I just understand how it's feasible. But Tom Brady had signed a 10-year deal with Fox, so famously, for a very cool $375 million. again.
That all?
It's just, how is this possible? But it is. So there were a couple of challenges, obviously, for Brady. One, he had never done it before. Two, it's hard to know if he has the natural personality in a Tony Romo way to just sweep in there and take to it to like a duck to water. But then what was so interesting is that Brady, you know, who's preached total dedication and perfectionism and do your job, he took a 10% stake in the Raiders last year as he's about to be unfurled as Fox's huge money signing. And, you know, I was reading a piece in the LA Times which kind of detailed Brady, because he now owns 10% of the Raiders, throughout this first year in commentary, he can't criticise other teams or game officials in the same way. He can't attend the production meetings that serve as like a really important way to prepare for games, because obviously, well, we can't have the Raiders dude hearing about our team ahead of the weekend. He's also not allowed on the facilities of any team besides the Raiders, except in stadiums when he's calling a game. He can't watch practice matches. So kind of like, for the guy who, you know, preaches excellence in every pursuit, really handcuffed himself. I don't know how Fox feel about this, and hasn't, it seems, I haven't seen a huge amount of him, Tara.
Yeah.
It seems, by force of personality and delivery and what, you know, insight, been able to make up for that other shortcoming. So this has been a 375 million damn squib, no?
Well, he's still the force of personality. I mean, that part is never going to go away. He has the highest name recognition of anybody coming out of the NFL in the last, 10, 15, 20 years. So I don't think that part is so much the issue. I don't think they feel like they're not getting their money's worth, in a way, because he's still Tom Brady and he's still number one analyst and he's there. It's been a fascinating thing. I, like you, honestly, haven't heard him a ton because I'm usually at a game, or he's the number one guy, right? He's on the number one team. The Patriots were not in position to be grabbing that spot at all this year on the broadcast. But I think this year it's interesting in terms of the preparation, which you bring up all the important points, right? Those production meetings, they're huge. They find out usually in those ones what the real injury situation is, what, you know, who truly is available for the game, what the depth chart, you know, they get a little more honest background because there's a partnership there with the networks and the teams, and they want the real information going out over the airwaves. So those things not being part of those are a hindrance without question. I think this first year he was able to, even though he took a year off from playing, he's so close enough still to people he played with, to teams that he had seen himself, that it didn't show itself. And I think you've seen it with Romo. I don't think Romo is nearly as good now as he was in the first few years when he came out and he was predicting plays all over the place because it was so familiar. It was what he had just come out of. I think the challenge for Brady, if he wants to continue doing this, especially in addition to owning that ownership stake, it is going to require a different amount of solo preparation, doing things on his own that he doesn't, you know, that he wouldn't have privy to. It's been interesting to me in that it's more like the personality part. The few bits that I've watched in the Times, you know, he's just seemed a bit uncomfortable, you know, a bit like the nerd in the room a little bit. And that's, you know, he's always been kind of the coolest guy in the room. And I think that's been the guy he took over for, right? I don't know how much you get to see. Greg Olsen had been, a great Pro Bowl tight end and sort of slipped into that spot when Brady,
really popular.
Yeah. When Brady took the year, and he's great. Right. And so even that sort of put an extra layer of expectation on Brady because he truly was taking over for somebody who was considered really, really good. So it's been a bit of a rocky road. Listen, the Brady we all know, he's probably saying, I'll get better. It's what I do. You know, yeah, I'll work harder. But I didn't think it was a stellar first season for him in the booth.
And that's what I always think with broadcasting. I'm not sure working harder necessarily is going to improve things.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
People, they just have it and they do no prep and they go on and they're engaging and they're fun and they're interesting. And Brady could work harder than anyone. If you just don't have it, you just don't have it, I think. He never, I could be wrong. He never struck me as somebody who had that personality. So he would need to bring a lot in terms of insight. He would need to be like blowing your mind with what he's telling you about what's happening on the field.
Yeah, or just share a lot more insight and personal experiences. But that's hard to do sometimes in the context of the game because you are truly trying to tell people what's going on in the game. Maybe he would have been better served, like in his podcast, sometimes when he sits with Jim Gray and he does the podcast stuff, that's a little more interesting because it's anecdotal and it's a little bit more some of his experiences. There's no doubt the guy gets football better than anybody, but he's not Peyton Manning. Like when Peyton Manning goes on with Belichick and they break down plays and they're doing all the diagramming stuff, like Peyton has like this quick delivery and able to break it down. And I haven't yet. Like I don't know that I've gotten that sense yet from Tom Brady, but you can get better at certain parts of broadcasting. There's no doubt about it. But you're right. The personality aspect generally is what it is.
Speaking of quarterbacks in their 40s who command our attention, you obviously worked in the New York market, and Aaron Rodgers is there now. Second season, I guess he was on the field for his second season as opposed to his first, but it didn't go well. So it has been 2 very bad years for Aaron Rodgers. He is, of course, Super Bowl winner early on in his career with Green Bay. He is a 4-time MVP. I watched the Netflix documentary. I know you haven't seen it, so it was certainly a very, I think, sympathetic treatment of Rodgers. He's a producer. A lot of it was with his say-so. So, for instance, I'll play you a clip here of Rodgers. Okay. And this is not from the documentary. I'm almost making the point, nothing like this really ends up in the documentary.
Gotcha.
And I guess this is the stuff where for the last 3-4 years, Rodgers has gone from the, man, what a talent, he's a guy I'd like to have a beer with kind of guy, to people going, whoa. So here he is speaking last year on the Look Into It podcast. And again, it's just him holding court in a way that has become quite familiar to people in the last couple of years.
The blueprint, the game plan was made in the 80s. Create a pandemic, with a virus that's going wild, right? Fauci was given like over $350 million to research this, to come up with drugs, new or repurposed, to handle the AIDS pandemic. And all they came up with was AZT. And if you do even a smidge of research, and I know I'm not a, epidemiologist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an immunologist, whatever the fuck. I can read though, right? And I can learn and look things up just like any normal person. I can do my own research, which was so vilified, to even question authority. But that was the game plan back then. Create an environment where only one thing works. Back then, AZT. Now, remdesivir until we get a vaccine, which, by the way, Anthony Fauci had stake in the Moderna vaccine. And we know Pfizer is one of the most criminally corrupt organizations ever. The fine they paid was the biggest in the history of the DOJ in 2009. Like, what are we talking about? We're going to put our full trust in science that can't be questioned.
So he's still in that kind of form. The makers of the documentary did not choose to lean into that side of him. They maybe, I'm sure he talked happily that way to the camera, but they stayed away from that in a fairly big way. So it was a sympathetic treatment, and he comes off reasonably well in many ways. Like, where is he now? I mean, that stuff there, when he says things like, we can't question authority, I'm sort of with him. I'm like, that's not unreasonable. But then he starts hitting me with this like, word salad of, I've done my research and I've checked this, and did you know this? And I'm kind of, gee, that sounds interesting. And then before you've even time to digest it, he's hitting you with 10 other mad scandals. And it's like, where have you done give me some like reference points. Where is all this coming from? Is this like, did you read this on the CBS website? Is this more, on page 15 of Reddit? So I don't know what to make of him.
Well, the whole thing that he's so much smarter than the rest of us too is just painful. I find like that type of approach to anything, you must be open-minded to my ideas, but I'm closed off to yours because I'm right. I'm just right. And you have to listen to me. He's just the condescension, I think. And even to bring up, again, I'm with you. Question authority, be a critical thinker for sure. We all should be, to a large degree, critical thinkers and think for ourselves. But it almost makes me laugh, and I'll relate this to a point you made earlier. He's talking about the millions given to Fauci when he works in sports in America, like where the money is like monopoly money. I mean, the amount of guys, the money these guys make and get handed to, like you said, to be on TV or to play football or whatever. That to me it sounds completely short-sighted. What's the word? Like myopic. Like he just doesn't see beyond his own little radius. And that's really what you've seen in these last few years. Is his personality has completely overshadowed his game, and then for it to happen with the Jets, who as a franchise, are quite possibly the most dysfunctional in all of American sports, who, by the way, his owner is happens to run one of those pharmaceutical companies that he abhors, right? But takes the paychecks from. I mean, that's Johnson and Johnson. That it just there's so much in Aaron Rodgers' brain that I would not even want to try to decipher. And it just has overshadowed everything to me in these last couple of years, because even quite honestly, his statistics this year weren't even all that bad, right? But all you know about Aaron Rodgers this year is kind of some of the wacky off the field stuff, or the locker room dysfunction that is clearly clearly sunk the Jets this year.
Well, you can easily forget that he was MVP in 20 and 21, like well into his late 30s, which was a remarkable performance, remarkable effort.
Yeah.
Somewhat unlucky not to have got another Super Bowl somewhere along the way. His performances warranted it. And yet, I mean, that is now the first thing you think of with Rodgers. Like in the documentary, there was a colossal lack of self-awareness in a way that even
Bingo.
So unaware that he watched it and cleared it. But I mean, it documented with flashbacks from it told the story of his career, but it detailed his year trying to get back from an Achilles injury inside the same season, his first year at the Jets, trying to make it back.
Right.
And like routine, like, okay, once it was fine, twice it was fine. Like by the 10th time that he announced to the room, be it doctors or physios or whoever, but I'm not like other people. And they like sort of looked at the ground and didn't know, like, right. You were just like, oh my God.
We get it.
You're so impressive. We get it.
Yeah. You're superhuman. Yeah. There's just something so off-putting about that. It just, and stuff where you pegged it 100%. There's a great line. My favorite sports movie of all time is Bull Durham. I don't know if you've seen it. It's baseball minor leagues in America. Yeah. It's my favorite. And Susan Sarandon has this great line. The world is made, or maybe it's Kevin Costner, is made for people who aren't blessed with self-awareness. They lead the happiest, most contented lives, I think, but stunning lack of self-awareness. And I mean, really, even I think as it relates to being the leader of a football team, there's you can't be a quarterback, especially one as good as Aaron Rodgers, and not just be the face of your team. You're the person who sets the tone. You're the person who kind of, you have to distribute the ball. You got to make sure guys are happy. You're the leader of the team, whether you want to be or not. And I think a lot of that really affected, so even on the field, it was great that he came back. It was an incredibly impressive recovery from a truly devastating injury, especially one at his age. But again, just so much baggage. To me, he's just a guy that cartload, that walks around just with a massive cart of baggage coming behind him, even if he goes to another team next year.
Yeah.
I say good luck, because there's just so much extra baggage with him.
Yeah. Like, and again, I don't want to portray him as like a complete joke figure, because there is there's a real intellect.
He's literally one of the 5 best quarterbacks possibly in the history of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, the throwing the football, the guy's incredible. I mean, that part, there's no denying his skill. It's the whole package has kind of just taken on this other dimension.
Yeah. But there is an intellect there. I mean, he'll tell you it's there, but it is there, and he is not living the unexamined life. I mean, he's going off on like a 24-hour silent retreat in a room. It's kind of amazing.
Some acid trips.
Hallucinogenics to explore his psychology. It's kind of amazing somebody could be lacking in such self-awareness when they sit in a room on their own for 24 hours, but he sort of is. But then I'm like, well, if he was here, he might well say, well, supreme confidence is actually pretty important if you're going to be a quarterback of my standing. So it's by design as well. Obviously, and I took the vaccine for COVID. I didn't read into it. I didn't overly think about it. I just relied on market forces. And he might be within his rights to say, should you not read about things you're putting in your body? Now I don't know what he's reading. I don't know where he's going. But my question was going to be, you take all of these complexities and contradictions, and is his standing now almost across the board in America? And I know there is no universal stance on anything in America, but is he like a joke figure, or is he a hero to huge quotients of society? Do you suspect?
I'd probably quote my son, who loves the line, like a little column A, a little column B.
Right.
Like you said, right? There's not a lot of unity of opinion anymore, and there's a lot of division. But I would say, listen, when it comes to NFL circles who are just looking at the best quarterbacks of all time, Aaron Rodgers has not lost his status for people, in terms of respect for his skill and what he has done and what he has accomplished on the field. I do think there are some of the not getting that second Super Bowl, I think, is rightly held against him personally to some degree. because, he did have a lot of opportunity. Although, you look back and what was Green Bay doing in terms of getting him receivers through all those years. But no, I think, yes, there's a segment on the other side of the coin where if they tend to agree with him more, are like, yeah, that's my guy. He's in a position of high profile and he's saying things that, that we want to. But I think that's personally, in my experience, that's a little bit more of the fringe. Like, to me,
okay.
He's seen a little bit more as a kook off the field, but on the field has not really lost the respect, I think, of people who just watch football.
Yeah.
For his skills, anyway. Like, again, the leadership stuff has just been a bit, because that's the part that I think has been tainted a little bit by his wackiness. It's hard for him to relate to guys in a locker room. First of all, the age is always tough, right? When you get to you're still playing into your 40s and guys are entering the league and they're 22. What do you have in common? It actually was one of Tom Brady's greatest attributes. He used to go around the room. He used to make sure and get to know people's names, and he would invite them to lunch. And, he would really make a concerted effort to know everybody, to prove to them that within the confines of that locker room, he was no different. He was no higher. He was no more elevated. And Bill Belichick made sure of that. He yelled at Tom Brady in film sessions more than any other single player, almost by design, to prove that no one was higher. And I don't think Aaron Rodgers in and of himself, and I don't think the Jets as an organization were ever able to find that balance as a football franchise, which has sort of just contributed to this where we are now with Rodgers, which is, like you said, a little bit of that kooky, quacky guy off the field, still really good on it. But Who knows if he'll find a place next year. Okay.
So more broadly then, away from New York and away from Boston, you're kind of neck of the woods. Like I said, Super Bowl's a month away. We have 6 games this weekend into Monday. It's kind of beautifully set up in that we have Detroit Lions and Detroit making a comeback in a big way on and off the field. They are playing the best football of the year. They are the favourites. And yet Kansas City are obviously the Super Bowl champions and going for 3 in a row. And until somebody stops them in a knockout game, it's hard to go against them. They are due to meet in the Super Bowl if everything goes to plan. So there's a lot to get stuck into here. Has this been a good season so far?
Sure, absolutely. I think the Chiefs' ability to keep winning all those close games has made for great storylines this year. I think Detroit, like you said, their resurgence, and Minnesota too. The Sam Darnold has been a great story this season, sort of coming back from that hellscape that is the Jets franchise and re-energizing his career. The Ravens are legit. The Bills are legit. There's been enough teams at the top to really make things interesting. Like, I'm sure you saw that when the Lions and Vikings played on Sunday night. First time in the history of the NFL, anytime you can say that 2 14-win teams played each other in the regular season, which spoke to kind of having a good enough handful of teams at the top that it doesn't feel like the Chiefs are any foregone conclusion by any means. I'm with you. I stick with the Chiefs until they lose. I feel like they deserve that much for their resume and what they've proven. But it will be much harder this year. There's certainly roadblocks in their way. But yes, to answer your question, I would say it has been considered a good, very entertaining, as usual, NFL season.
Yeah. And the Chiefs aren't scoring, one of the few teams not to break 30 points all season, but defense is rock solid. That's kind of their MO here.
Yeah, for sure. And they've been able to win that way before. And, Mahomes is Mahomes. He's the best guy now. And it's, for me, again, as somebody who tends to relate things to New England, which is not unfair given that they set the standard with how many Super Bowls they won, the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes combo, like those guys are so in sync and work so well together. It's a little reminiscent of Belichick Brady. A little bit later, obviously, Reid is older, starting there. But yeah, I think they've proven they can win close games, right? That's what they've had to. So that gets hard, though, right? Weather comes in. Who knows? I think it should be a really fun playoff for sure. And it always is.
Have Detroit taken the position of beloved underdogs of the nation?
Well, they were such overdogs early on, but yes, I think based solely on the number of injuries, if you guys followed that at all, they have been utterly decimated across the board. Offense, defense, lost their best defensive player, Aiden Hutchinson, early in the season, and it just has not stopped them. I think the world has fallen in love with their crazy coach, Dan Campbell, if you ever get to see some of his interviews and his sort of, like he's almost like the gunslinger that Brett Favre used to be as a quarterback, but as a coach, he's always he's willing to go for anything on fourth down. He's got a lot of guts when it comes to play calls. He puts a lot of faith in his players. He has their belief a lot. And, he has speech about biting off kneecaps. Like, he's just incredibly intense. And I think incredibly proud of sort of that, bringing that resurgence to Detroit, even as a city and as a football city. So yes, I would say this year, especially, I think they're probably like America's darlings if you had to pick one team.
Okay, because we were thinking we might do a piece at some stage over the next couple of weeks on Detroit. Every bit as much about the team as the city. One of those remarkable cities. It's making a bit of a comeback from years of degeneration.
Yeah, for sure. Because, of course, it's America's most famous car manufacturing auto plant city. That really went through the economic downturn, and you've seen a resurgence more like cultural. I was there a couple of years ago. I think it was for a bowl game, and you could just see like arts returning to downtown, and then like the pride of a football team. It really does. It can lift a whole city. I know that sounds a little bit pie in the sky sometimes, but it all kind of goes hand in hand. And like, Michigan, University of Michigan last year won the college football national championship. You just see things like that lift a city. So yeah, there's definitely a good story in there for sure in terms of kind of the American landscape or the American story about this city and identity and all of that.
So I can't watch everything, Tara. What am I watching over the weekend?
In America, the people make a sport out of watching TV, right? About watching the football playoffs. You sit in front of your TV nonstop. What's good this weekend? What do you think? Can Philadelphia make a legitimate inroad? Will their quarterback be healthy? And they've been sort of right there at the top all year. And is that going to go the way they want? Is Washington, the Commanders, for real with their rookie quarterback? He's been so much fun to watch. Pittsburgh, historically one of the great franchises. And, if their coach, Mike Tomlin, has never had a losing season. He has some amazing statistics, but they have not done well in the playoffs the last couple of years. So I think there are always great storylines, and it's one of those days around here. You kind of park yourself in front of the TV if you're not at one of the games and just load up on your snacks and really sink in. Cause it's just, it's a great wild card. It's one of the most fun weekends to watch football.
Okay. I was hoping for something more specific. That really does sound like watch everything. So that's my deal.
Fair enough. Sorry. I tend to look at the league as a whole. Since I'm not at one game this weekend, the Patriots are not a playoff team, nor the Giants or Jets, who would be local, whatever that I might have watched in the past. So, I tend to want to be a regular old viewer this weekend.
Fair enough. Word seems to be Dublin's going to get an NFL game next season. Roger Goodell was saying
yes, I have heard that. Yeah. Any rooting interest? Do you want a specific team? Who do you think will attract the best interest?
Well, I think you could put anyone there.
Yeah.
This is going to be...
Even the Jacksonville Jaguars?
You could put the Jaguars there all day long.
Titans?
Yes.
All right.
Everything. You could
Carolina Panthers?
Throw
There's
anything
some
at
bad
us.
Teams out there.
No.
Right.
I think this will be fever pitch. This will be hottest ticket in town.
That's delightful.
Be a takeover.
Yeah. No, I love it. Having only been over for, Springsteen concerts and the like, I would love to see that crowd because I think it'll be a lot. I hope it all happens, but it sounded like, I think Goodell basically, admitted it or whatever, said that Dublin was in the pipeline for next season. So go for it. I hope it all comes together.
Boston, New York, Springsteen concerts in Dublin, Tara Sullivan. You don't have any Irish blood in there?
Oh, tons. My mother was raised in Limerick, and I went to University of Limerick for a semester. My sister lives in Tullamore with her husband and family, so it's all over the place. Family everywhere. Yeah.
Sorry, I was presuming this would be my great-great-grandfather, 1847.
No.
Oh, wow.
My mom was born in Ireland. She passed away many years ago, and my dad's both parents were from Sligo and Clare, County Clare. So yeah, that's all there is. And I actually have a second job teaching Irish step dancing. My daughter's a world qualified Irish step dancer. Yeah, where it's all through and through. There's no escaping it in my house.
Oh my God, I didn't realize. Okay.
Oh yeah, I have more cousins in Ireland than I have in America, and I've probably been. What am I? I'm in my 50s. I've probably been there 30 times. It's just it's even when I covered the Olympics, I booked my ticket on the way home through Dublin to make sure and get a little stop on the way home. So
Tara, I didn't
my daughter's
realize.
hoping to study. She's in college now. So hoping to head over this fall semester.
Okay.
And do her study abroad.
Okay, very good. Amazing.
Yes, we love it. We're all in on the Irish.